First of all, thanks for the kind invite to moderate this cool panel. We have a repeat speaker with us as well, right? My name is Alex. I'm one of the co-founders and general partner at Chamaleon. It's a VC firm based out of Silicon Valley. What makes us a little bit different is we typically invest 1 to 5 million into startups globally, but we have a team working side by side with the deal team that are quant, data scientists, data engineers, and software developers that are building models that we use to more proactively reach out to founders out there based on signals. And so that already led us in the current fund to invest in 10 companies, 2 of them in the Web3 space. One, most likely you guys already heard of, called Misted Labs, and another one called Origami that is in the DAO space. But it's a pleasure to be here today and to moderate a panel about something that I don't know a lot about, so I'm going to do my best. But as any VC will do, we can talk about a little bit about everything, right? And fake it until we make it. So let's do that. And so I think the first question that I want to throw out there to the great panelists that we have here today is, which are the models, the monetization models that are interesting you the most now. You have play to earn, play and earn, and a bunch of others as well. And I think the first question to set the scene is, what is exciting you the most, and what are the opportunities that you're seeing out there and challenges? Maybe we're going to start with Karim, that has a great accelerator and initiatives that are investing in gaming companies, right? I think you already have like 14 in your portfolio. And so maybe let's start with you.
Okay. Hi. It's on. My name's Karim. I do token design at Outlier Ventures. I suppose when it comes to monetization models for Web3 gaming, it's very game specific, of course. Although something that excites me is the fact that you can have provable ownership of these digital items, and then you can kind of have marketplaces within games that encourage content creation as well. So on a high level, that's what I'm excited about.
Nice, yeah. We have, is it on?
Yeah, I think it is.
Okay. Yeah, one of the models we're most excited about, we have a portfolio company called Nor, and they're exploring a model. I kind of touched on it briefly in the last panel, but the idea is that the game itself should be like sacred, right? So no monetization should enter the game itself. And this is a similar model to like sports, right? Where if you're playing football, if you're playing tennis, if you're playing any sport, the monetization doesn't enter the game itself, because you want the game to be accessible to as many people as possible, and you also want it to be purely based on skill, right? As equal and level a playing field as possible, because skill and like the interactions between skillful players is what creates meaning, which is like what games are based on according to this theory, right? And so in that sense, basically, the way monetization happens is it happens in the meta games that are created on top of that base game, right? So you have a skillful game, like in football or whatever, and then on top you have broadcasting, right? And you have sponsorships, and you have merchandise, and you have all the like meta games, similar to like how derivatives are built on spot markets. You have these derivative games built on top of the base game, right? And we're super interested in that in crypto too. And I think like it's a really interesting way to think about monetizing games, in that you have this, the game that's kept very simple and very pure, and then on top of that you can have like an auction house game, right, where people are speculating on resources in the game. You can have like a collectibles game where people can collect moments from the winning games, moments like the skin that the guy wore when he won the world championships and headshot the final guy in the FPS or whatever it might be, and others like staking players, right, sponsoring them to go to tournaments and stuff like that. I think that has a lot of potential, because you as a meaning generation engine, it's purer basically. So that's one we're really interested in.
I think one of the most interesting things about bringing Web3 into gaming, specific to assets that can be traded every single, where I think the resale value is definitely a good monetization model for most games. You can have a huge volume and people that buy an asset that later on they can resell it and trade it or even give to friends or whatever. I do believe that's powerful, and that's for the user perspective, it's amazing, right? You can trade now. Most people spend a lot of money in skins, as we all know, but they are not tradable, right? So I do think that incentivize more people to buy assets because they can potentially resell after. So you get a lot of volume, a lot of royalties, fees. So for the game itself, it's pretty good. For the player, there is, as José was saying, there is skill based, so you are really rewarded through your skill. And also there is the luck base, which I believe people like to get lucky to get a rare item or asset in the middle of a random game, right? I think everyone likes to be surprised, and that happening, for example, CSGO in the early days. Now, of course, the assets are worth less, but yeah.
Yeah, I kind of agree. Like the model that really sparks my eyes, it's what José just described. So a skill-based game, like where you don't really influence anything that happens in the game. So it doesn't matter if you are a rich guy that spends $100,000 in the game or if you don't spend anything. The game is pure, the game is based on skill. That moves a lot of people. So we are going to have a tournament here, and one of the games is CSGO. It's a Web2 game because people like to watch and people know that it's a skill-based game. And essentially what I think can add value and the model that excites me are the meta games. So at Exeedme, like we really didn't describe it that way, but like we created a competitive gaming platform for Web2 games, and we created an economy on top of it. So the games are still skill-based, but you can create a lot of meta games on top of it. And if you look, for example, at Axie Infinity, for example, what I think it happened is you had the game, but you had the meta game, like which was mixed with the game itself. So you had all the speculators, all the investors, instead of having meta games where they can play without influencing the game, they were influencing the gameplay. They were influencing the players that got there to play the game. So skill-based, clearly, and I've read a little bit about Norse. I would love to know more about what they are doing. Is really something that captures my attention. The other thing is, sometimes we think about things that are really complex, and I've seen some use cases really cool about some mobile games where they use the freemium model, but they use rewards in Bitcoin, solely that. And what happens is basically they are reducing the customer acquisition cost, and they are increasing the retention. So they have a freemium model, but they put rewards that are in Bitcoin, and that attracts users and retain more users. So I think it's kind of the two approach. The one that is really simple and looks at an evolution to the freemium model, and the other one that is based on skill-based games and the meta games that you create on top of it.
Okay, so I think you already touched a little bit the second question that I had was a little bit related to the fact that, Play to Earn started with a model that didn't, design well the balance between demand and supply, and we had tons of issues, right, with the initial guys paying for the whole thing and the, the investors and all what you just touched about. So maybe, are you guys seeing any really emerging things in terms of different ways of building monetization models out there that are still not that well known? Have you seen anything, particularly special? You touched a little bit the collectible side as well. Do you think NFTs can have a play there? Maybe, what kind of really emerging things are you seeing out there? Maybe, I don't know if we want to start or pass the ball.
I'll let someone else start.
It's a difficult question.
Yeah.
Really, the use case that I talked about, like about adding rewards with Bitcoin, it's something like different that you don't see like everywhere. But I think the thing here is like there has been and there is a lot of experimentation, and that's the cool part. So everybody is trying to do their own stuff, and that's cool because I think we are in the part of experimenting. And no one really knows. I would be surprised if somebody already knows the exact model that is going to work. I was speaking with Mo, which is head of tokenomics at Animoca Brands, and like they design for all of the games like in their portfolio. And it tells me it's experimentation. Like, we don't know also. We are experimenting like with 1 token, 2 tokens, even with 3 tokens. So it's really seeing what is out there, seeing what it works, and at the same time have something, and I think this is very important for the game studios, have some software or some way of measuring really what is happening in the economy. And I think there is an emerging trend that says that basically you should have a part of the economy that is not fully open. So you have some resources that are on-chain, and you have other resources that you can control, like a central bank, but in a game, that you can control so that the economy doesn't get out of hand like it happened with Axie Infinity. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of experimentation. As Nuno was saying, 2 tokens, 3 tokens even in some games. In my opinion, I think we should go a bit simpler. So I do think there is probably a need for the token eventually in some games, others not so much, but why not focus on having a quality game and have the NFTs as assets, right? Why not just focus on that? Why you need a token, right? And that's kind of proven model, right? There is, as we all know, like people spend $1 billion in skins in Fortnite, CSGO, and so on. So why not using that, but now with NFTs, which has the pros that we all know here. So I do think I'm a big favor of experimentation, but also I do think that we should go a bit simpler in some situations. And like Nuno was saying, some assets should be off-chain as well. So, for example, I think one of the things that kind of went well in the dual token economy is that the secondary token was supposed to be used inside the game. It's supposed to have utility, and we all know if it's an open token, people will speculate on it, right? Why not make that token off-chain one, right? So just you really can only spend that token or use that token inside the game, right? So again, let's see what people come and see what works. But like Nuno said, there is no solution, I would say, right now, but definitely a lot of experimentation, which is very good for the space.
So what do you think are the key considerations we should keep in mind when deciding whether an in-game asset or a token should be on-chain or off-chain?
Yeah, so I think you always need to see, like, do you have this token and what is the utility of the tokens? If the token is to poorly only be used in the game, I do think should be off-chain, right? There is no need, in my opinion, to be on-chain because you always will combine the players with the speculators, and it's very hard to combine those type of different goals per se. So I don't know, but that's kind of my opinion on it. Yeah.
Cool. And what do you guys think about the underlying tech that is available? Do you think there's still missing pieces to make, better Web3 games out there that can take full advantage of monetization models? For example, we invested at Miston Labs, and the underlying thesis was there's still space in the layer 1 to have something really secure that can handle thousands of transactions in seconds, right? There's still not anything robust enough out there, and that's really crucial for gaming, right? What are your thoughts? Do you think there's still missing pieces out there in terms of tech to actually explore more models or not? Do you want to catch that one?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of missing pieces in the tech stack. I think scalability is definitely one of them, although you do have like a lot of very fast, cheap block space on Solana that people haven't really managed to put to use, right? There haven't been very scalable games built on Solana, and it's like interesting to ask why. Maybe the liveness issues, although games don't really need that much liveness. So it's an interesting question. I definitely think on-chain games are kind of the purest kind of Web3 games, and so if you can have a very scalable environment, then and you can run the whole game logic plus the assets plus governance on chain, that's kind of the purest form of Web3 game. I think the other part that's really missing is like wallet experience. We've recently invested in a project called Hyperplay, which was by one of the co-founders of MetaMask actually. And the idea there is just to very much like simplify the wallet experience for Web3 gaming, right? There's all sorts of bits and pieces to that, from like users not having to store their seeds to having some kind of like smart contract wallet functionality so that you have social recovery and you have the ability to have like single signer for transactions in the game. Also ability to like delegate gas so you don't have to own the native token to pay fees or have that friction where you have to go buy the native token of the chain just in order to pay fees in the game. I think all that stuff needs to be fixed such that someone can come in without knowing anything about crypto and still enjoy this game and have the crypto part be kind of optional on top. Definitely launchers need to improve as well. Like, you know, the Play Store and the Apple Store have a lot of limitations on what you can do. I think the Solana phone that's launching soon should help that a lot in terms of also having the signature in the secure enclave, so you can build new experiences where you can just sign with your phone, right, without having to actually like have a seed and then have social recovery on top of that. So yeah, I definitely think there's like a lot of tech missing for Web3 games to go mainstream. The thing with gaming is normally infrastructure doesn't really play out that well, right? It's generally the games themselves that end up building the infrastructure that they need and then commercializing it, right? Whether it's Steam or others. And you are seeing that a little bit in crypto too.
Do you want to add something, Nuno?
I think that like what is missing, right? What was the question? Quality games, but it's missing in the terms of being released. I believe they are being produced right now as we speak. But in terms of technology, of course, there are some missing pieces. What I was talking about in terms of having like the right models or have something that you could plug into your engine and really be analyzing like how your economy is evolving. Like Machination as a wonderful product. They've been like working for years, even before like blockchain games. They were like doing their tools for game designing of normal traditional games. So I think that is part of what is missing in terms of like from the economy side. And the other thing is we still need to figure out, as we are saying, like how we can put blockchain in the backend and really work on the usability in terms of like bringing a good experience for gamers so that they can stay. And I think doing that with meta games, it's probably easier. So because you can just focus on the game and then you create the other meta games that are subject to a lot of openness, are subject to investors, are subject for people that love skins and like they buy those cosmetics because they love to see it in the game, but it doesn't really affect the game. So a lot of experimentation is needed and a lot of tooling, is needed still. So we are still in the early stages. I haven't seen a Web3 Gaming Festival yet. I'm sure in Asia there are a couple, but so we are still in the initial stage. And I hope that like in 3 years, 4 years, we'll have a complete different conversation about like wonderful games and like teams, sports teams that are DAOs and come in and really like the fans have a take in choosing what are the players that are going to play in that game. That is a meta game. That is something that people like use social network to do, but they don't really, they have influence, but they don't have a take. Imagine like a DAO for esports where you really can have a say in the team that you follow. That would be wonderful. Of course, with some rules, but like, as every institution like has some rules, we will have just smart contracts where the rules are putting in. So there are a couple of nice things that I think we can create. Yes.
Maybe jumping into another question a little bit related to what Nuno said is, what are your guys' thoughts on the more traditional gaming companies eventually using Web3 and developing Web3 gaming and making the transition versus this being mainly a market for the emerging players that are developing now games on Web3? Do you think we're going to see over time the big traditional players jumping on board of Web3 gaming or not? What are your thoughts there?
Okay, if I can start. I mean, if and when players start to realize that it's important to own these in-game assets because then I can plug them into other stuff, and because it's interoperable, I can do way more things with them. And I'm sure we all hope it's more of a when than an if. Then that might be the impetus for a lot of these, Web2 gaming studios or companies to integrate a lot of these like SDKs that are being developed to, to enable their user base to own these items and access the benefits of interoperable rails.
Yeah, I think eventually they will. The problem with big corporations in like established industry is that they usually don't want to make the first step. But I do believe once they see a lot of users and once one of the big players actually go not all in but develop a game or going full Web3, I think they will need to have a competitive advantage. And also in the user perspective, I believe once a user understands, okay, now I can actually own the asset and actually be part of the game, potentially even gets part of the revenue as the token and so on, they will eventually need to follow the player and the users, right? So I do think that just a matter of time, but I do think at the same time that will take a few years to get there, but will be fast, in my opinion, once it hits hard.
Yeah, we've spoken to a few of them, and I think it's really tough and it's the same situation that you have with when any existing incumbent looks at a new technology, right? They look at it and they think, how can I do what I'm currently doing on this new technology, right? And so they're never really looking at it from an approach of how can I use the unique characteristics of this new technology to build something new, right? Whether it's with the internet, you have the newspapers and they just literally ported their newspapers online, right? They didn't think of social media, which is a medium that takes advantage of the fact that on the internet you have this bi-directional data flow, right? It's not just one person broadcasting down, it's everyone. And I think there's a lot of that with crypto, and it also involves a certain sort of cannibalism, right? You have to cannibalize your existing business to take advantage of this new opportunity, right? With the internet, you have to allow anyone to be a publisher in order to take advantage of the opportunity, which erodes your moat as a newspaper, right? With gaming, these publishers are making literally billions of dollars selling skins that players can't resell, right? It's a hard ask to ask them to open that up to anyone to adopt the Web3 model, and especially to adopt it, I think, in the way that it's most interesting and that suits the medium, which is open IP, open assets, and giving players ownership and control over the game. I think that's a really tough ask. And so I think, as with any kind of new technological medium, the big winners, I think, will be the people that build experiences tailored to that medium, that take advantage of the unique characteristics of it.
Yeah, I agree that incumbents don't have the incentive to really apply it in their games. They are making millions. Their games are successful. So it comes to a structure where you ask why change if you are in running that company. So I think most innovation is coming from new entrants, new players that come from traditional gaming studios, but have this different idea of an openness level that your game has to have that a traditional studio is not used to. They are used to control everything that happens in the game, or they try to control it. So I think it has to be somebody that comes from the experience of building beautiful games in these companies, but have a different mindset and a different philosophy in what a game means. I think those guys are probably going to be the big winners in the next couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, there's some really interesting examples, the guys who built EVE Online are working on a crypto game, and that's an example of that's one of the most complex games, and especially economies in the world, right? In terms of, and so they have full-time, I think a team of economists on that game, and a head of economy that's working on balancing that and everything. So it's fascinating to speak to them, and they're taking those learnings, but they understood that they can't just slap it onto EVE. They have to build something from scratch, right? Build an experience from scratch. And that I'm definitely very bullish on, because it's people that understand gaming, and especially gaming economy, super deeply, and are now looking at this new medium and how can we build something like tailored to this. And there's a few examples of that.
And by the way, just to add very quickly on that, like the EVE Online gaming economy is so complex that there's some great videos you can find online kind of discussing the dynamics there that are really fascinating.
Cool. Maybe one last question before we see if we have any questions from the audience. It's a twofold question. Which is the game that you like the most in Web3 that you play or like the most, and which one do you think is the best designed game? It can be a different game, right? I'm curious if you guys are playing or not, right? And what do you like the most out there? Nuno, do you want to start?
Yeah, I was looking around to the games that I already tried and see the ones that really, to be honest, I haven't yet played Overshock. Sorry, Marco, I want to play it today. But I'm really excited about what he's building. I've looked into what he was building like 1 year ago, probably. And like if you look at the art, if you look at, and you can see like it from the screen from here, like it looks like a game that you really want to play and play it competitively. So I'm more into the competition level. I like something that is really competitive. I think it's a beautiful game to try out. In terms of design, to be honest, I think I ever tried EVE Online. Like Dark Forest is a fully on-chain game. I really, top of my mind, I can't really choose one that I think like the design is, all are experiments. So if I go back to the one that I described about like freemium game, put BTC rewards, retention is higher, cost of acquisition is lower, perfect for them. So that's a beautiful, simple design. You don't have to invent the wheel and you can add some innovation.
I didn't try much games, but I do like Big Time. I do think they are doing amazing things there. Superior is also a pretty fun game and also high quality. I like Hearthstone, so I do like as well Gods Unchained and Cards of Eternity, which is a recent game as well that we also support. But it's definitely a lot of quality out there, and I do believe there is a game for everyone. Even if you are super casual, if you are super competitive, if you are looking to build your character or just play casual, there is also already a lot of games that you can already play. Of course, it takes time to develop a AAA game, and it's one of the things that crypto people don't have, which is patience. But there is a lot of quality out there. I do think we are past the ways of the Axie Infinity days. Now there is much more quality. And I think another good indicator of that is there is a lot of talent coming from big companies like Activision, Ubisoft, and so on. And I'm talking about senior positions coming to the space and actually building their own game. And I do think that's a big indicator, because we are talking about high-paying jobs, very established senior roles. It's not like young people. So they are basically, it shows the potential, and it shows that it is probably the future. So.
Yeah. And good games take like years to develop, so we have to wait a little bit, right? How about you?
Yeah, there's definitely very excited about a lot of games that are in the works, but stuff I'm playing right now, they're both portfolio companies, but Crypto Unicorns on chain is pretty interesting. I think it's the typical kind of race car game. So if you're familiar with Derby Stars and stuff before, it's that kind of game. And then I recently played the Illuvium beta, which is looking really good. That's like more of an MMORPG style game, and I think that's the best graphics as well of any crypto game that I've played. So, pretty excited about that one.
Cool.
I'm not much of a gamer. I played Hovershot before the panel, which was quite good, and otherwise I play a lot of online backgammon. As for game economies, I find very interesting. I think a lot of these new kind of models that use kind of an off-chain token to incentivize behaviors and then use an on-chain token for the value capture mechanisms seem like nice models going forward. for these Web3 games.
Great. We still have some time. I don't know if there's any question from the audience.
So, here's the thing. Given the premise that the skill part of the game should be as untouched as possible with the monetization of some of the game's items, I think we have to address the full spectrum. And we have we have like, given that premise, we have like cosmetics, but some people argue that games should have items that are pay to win, and the other end of the spectrum are people that say like, if each of you has played any games, you know that when you have a new skin or something, your dopamine receptors fire and you are like fully pumped to play the game, and sometimes you even play better. So I know this is like a personal question to each one of us, but don't you think that skins, even though they don't change skill as much as other things, don't you think they still change them a bit because of the psychology of each of us?
Yeah, I actually think it's a really good point as well, because I think it's a spectrum, like you said, right? On one end, you have like pure skill games, like Counter CS 1.6 or something, right? Where the money doesn't affect the game at all. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have like poker, right? Where actually the money is part of the meaning of the game. Like, you don't want to play poker for play chips, right? It's no fun. Everyone's going all in every hand. There are no stakes. And then I think there's loads of stuff in the middle, like an experimentation spectrum in the middle with stuff like playing with skins, or even like something like Clash of Clans, right? Where you have to spend some money to actually get to a level where you can compete in the game. But once you've spent that money, then it's skill-based from there, right? So there's like kind of a ladder system. And so I do think like the purest sort of arm is one that we're interested in because it hasn't really been done in crypto so far, and it's interesting. And I think monetizing the meta games on top is something that crypto can do like uniquely well. But I'm also really interested in like experimentation all across the spectrum, like including stuff like permadeath games. We invested in like a permadeath game where, like, imagine RuneScape, if anyone's played RuneScape, when you go into the wilderness, but instead of losing all your items, you're actually losing like items worth, you know, thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? That's a way of playing with the concepts that the crypto allow you to bring in, but adding even more meaning on top of it. So I do think, especially with crypto, with like money being such a big part of crypto and like the wallet UX, you can do a lot of really cool stuff on the other side of the spectrum too. So I'm definitely not a like skill maxi. I think that like money and skill can be interwoven as well.
Any others? Do any of the others have an opinion on that?
By the way, the question was, how does having financial incentives change the game?
It was like, the initial premise was, we will put taxes in the middle, and the premise was, the skill part of the game should be as untouchable as possible. But in one end of the spectrum, some people might argue that cosmetics can influence the game as well because of the psychology. Like, when you have a new skin, you are more motivated to play better. And what is your opinion regarding that end of spectrum opinion?
Speaking from personal experience, I think just having a nice UI and a game looking very nice and colorful really appeals to my lizard brain, and I really enjoy it. And that's one of the bigger factors that makes me enjoy a game.
Okay, so basically you think that even though it might change a bit how we perceive the game, it should be added because it makes it more enjoyable.
I think for me, yeah, maybe how it looks, but this is personal, of course. The cosmetics affect my gaming experience more than the mechanics and the economics of the game.
Okay.
Yeah, just to add, I believe that it can influence your psychology, right? The same thing, like if you go to play soccer and you have like a new shorts or a new t-shirt and you feel confident about playing.
For sure.
I don't know if it makes you play better or not. I think in some spectrum, like when you are in the casual level, which would be my case in sports or any game that I play, it can influence the way that I feel about how I play, and I'm more concentrated, and I really want to show that it's not just the skin, it's also I have the skill as well in the same. So I think it can influence a little bit your play. But if you go to the professional level, I think it won't influence at that level. So at that level, you are really on the skill-based pure game where it won't influence. I agree as well that I love skill-based games and meta games, but I also agree that there are space for games where the money is really influence the game. And like, there would be some people, a lot of DJs, that would love to play a game where I can steal your wallet if I like win that game in the end. So I imagine that there is the spectrum. So we have the skill-based games where skins or cosmetics can play a role at a certain level, and you have another level where you can financialize the game, and there will be players that would love that. There are players that like spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions, in a game without getting anything. So imagine putting a stake on it where you can get more from it, or you can get more from the friend that you are playing against. I imagine there is a niche for that.
I think you have a prime example of skins and cosmetics actually incentivize people to play and they care about it, which is CSGO, right? There is a lot of people, including people from Valve, that said that the introduction of skins basically skyrocket the players, because people do like to have a different skin, or and especially if it's in Web3 specific, you can really have a very rare item, and that's people enjoy having that, right? As I was saying previously, people also like to get surprised, right? Playing a game randomly and you get a random item, you never know if it's a legendary one or not. That incentivizes a lot of people to play the game. So I do believe it's very, very important, especially in these days. And Fortnite is also a prime example, right? Like people spend millions in new skins and so on. So I do believe it's very, very important right now.
Okay. I'm done.
If we don't have any additional really short question, maybe we can end the session. We just have 1 minute left, so I think we're set, right? Guys, thanks so much. I hope you liked it, being here on stage, and I hope the audience as well, right? So congrats. Thanks.